Hey everybody, this is Brian with Bear Cards 34, and today I'm doing a video of my favorite card. This is for the Super Collectors Unite channel. Shout out to Dustin for managing that. It's got a great channel with some really awesome videos, and there's a Facebook page as well, so definitely check that out if you haven't already. So I will mention, my channel name is Bear Cards 34. I'm a huge Chicago Bears fan, huge Walter Payton fan. He's my all-time favorite player. So some of my very favorite cards ever are of Walter, and I did a PSA player run of Payton, and so these are definitely some of my all-time favorite cards. My favorite player of all time, the great Walter Payton Sweetness. So I just wanted to kind of show those because that is a big part of my collection. I love getting anything Walter Payton, and love these cards. And this is an auto from Proline with the certification down here at the bottom. Love that card as well. So those are some of my favorite cards, but my very favorite card of all time is this one right here. This is Brian Piccolo, 1969 Topps. And I also picked up this PSA 8, which is in much better condition. So monetarily, this is a better card, and I love them both. But this is my favorite card ever, and I'll explain why. But I just wanted to kind of show this one as well. So with this card right here, I was named after Brian Piccolo. If you follow my channel, you may be aware of that. I kind of like to say that I was born a Bears fan, and that's pretty much true, actually. So the funny thing with this card, this is Brian's one and only standard card. They did also produce cards that had 4 players pictured, and Brian's image was on one of those cards as well. He is actually also on this Chicago Bears team set right here. You've got Gale Sayers down here, number 40. You got Mike Ditka, some of the all-time great Bear legends. Dick Butkus is in there as well. And you've got Brian, there's Dick Butkus right there. And then Brian's right there in the middle, number 41. So that is another card that he is featured in, along with some of his teammates. So I did mention that there, some of the great players were on the team with Brian. Okay, so the reason I'm named Brian was that my parents saw this awesome movie, Brian's Song, back in the day. They had been watching it. It had already been out for a few years, but they hadn't seen it. And my mom was pregnant with me, and they watched that movie, and they just thought, let's name him after Brian Piccolo. And the funny thing on this card is Brian is misspelled. So the way you pronounce or spell his name is B-R-I-A-N. However, on the front of this card, it's B-R-Y-O-N. And on the back, they misspelled it a different way, B-R-Y-A-N. So go figure. But anyway, Brian was born on Halloween in 1943 in Pittsfield, Massachusetts. And the family moved to Florida when he was young. He played high school football in Fort Lauderdale. And he only had 2 scholarship offers despite being a high school star on the football team. And he chose Wake Forest, where in his senior year he led the nation in rushing and scoring. It's also mentioned there on the back of his cards. And so he was the ACC Player of the Year. And despite all that, he went undrafted in the NFL and AFL drafts. He ended up getting an invite to the Chicago Bears training camp, where and that's where the Brian's Song movie begins, is with them showing up to training camp. So if you haven't seen that movie already, I would highly recommend it. It was a made-for-TV movie in 1971, and it did so well that it was later shown in theaters. So with the football team, Brian was on the practice squad that first year. I think they called it the taxi squad back then. He had to really fight his way to be in the lineup. And in the movie, they highlight this, but Brian Piccolo and Gale Sayers, they ended up becoming roommates, and it was the first black and white player that had ever roomed together up to that point in the NFL. It had always been segregated prior to that. And in the movie, they kind of talk about that, where Brian was worried that he might not make the team, and Gale said to Brian, well, hey, they never would have assigned us a room together if you weren't on the team. And that really made him excited that he was going to make that team. And before the start of his rookie season, he was married to his high school sweetheart, Joy, and they had 3 daughters together. So he was a girl dad, just similar to me. I have 3 daughters as well. And So anyway, he fought hard to earn a spot, and part of the reason it was difficult was because of this guy right here, Gale Sayers. He was the Kansas Comet, just an electrifying running back, one of the greatest of all time, and nobody was going to be starting in front of him. So Brian worked his way into the backup role and was able to play alongside Gale Sayers as his backup, and they became great friends. They became very, very good friends. And that is mentioned in Gale Sayers' book that came out the year that Brian passed away. Gale wrote an autobiography called I Am Third, and the Brian Song movie is inspired by that book, as well as this book right here, Brian Piccolo, A Short Season by Jeannie Morris, and I'll mention that book more again in just a minute. And I will mention, Dick Butkus, we talked about him as well. He was another rookie from that draft. The Bears had an amazing draft that year with both Gale Sayers and Dick Butkus. And Brian was an undrafted free agent who made the team, was a rookie along with those two. Now, I will mention Brian and Gale had very different personality types. Brian was very outgoing, a prankster, liked to goof around a lot. And Gale was quite shy, but they clicked and they really balanced each other out. Sayers would call Brian Pick, and Pick would call Gale Sayers Magic. And the best thing for them was just being able to encourage each other and help each other out during those years. The Bears were not the greatest team, despite having some great players. And Gale Sayers was an all-pro. He was just fantastic. And then unfortunately in 1968, he had a knee injury, and that led to Brian Piccolo landing the starting spot. And as a reliever for Sayers, he ran for over 450 yards and 2 touchdowns, and he also had 28 receptions for almost 300 yards. By 1969, Sayers was back in the lineup, and they show in the movie Brian being there for Gale and really helping him through that recovery process. And although Sayers was never the same, he still came back and had another 1,000-yard season. He was still great, even despite one bad knee. And Brian became the starting fullback, so they were able to play with each other in the same backfield at the same time, and that was a really great thing for the two of them. Now, during that 69 season, Piccolo scored a 25-yard touchdown reception against the Steelers, and then in the very next game, he scored a 1-yard touchdown run versus Atlanta. But during that game, he then asked to be taken out of the game, which was something he had never done before. He had been doing nothing but trying to get onto the field every year he had been there, and that was very concerning for his teammates and coaches because it was so unlike him. So when they got back into Chicago, they had Brian go in for a medical evaluation, and he had had a difficulty breathing. He had been coughing, and so they ended up giving him a diagnosis of embryonal cell carcinoma, and he had a surgery to remove a tumor, and then he had to have a second surgery to remove his left lung and left pectoral muscle, and he continued to report having a lot of pain and discomfort, so we went back to the hospital. And unfortunately, it was found that the cancer had spread to his liver and also some other areas of his body. Now, during this time, Gale Sayers won the George S. Halas Award for the most courageous player. That was because of his fight to get back into the lineup and play again. And he won that award, but he stated when he did his acceptance speech that he was not the one deserving of the award, that Brian Piccolo was the one who should have that George S. Halas Most Courageous Player Award. And they show it in the movie. They quote him, and what Gale Sayers had said was that Brian Piccolo is the most courageous person he knew. And he said of the award, "It's mine tonight and Brian Piccolo's tomorrow." He also, said out loud, to the people who were there, I love Brian Piccolo, and I'd like for all of you to love him too. Tonight when you hit your knees, please ask God to love him. And that line is also in the movie. It's a very touching movie. I love it. They actually made a remake, I think back in 2001, but I haven't watched it yet. I'm just so partial to the original. Maybe one of these days I'll watch it, but I just love the original so much that I just kind of keep that one in my mind. But, Brian fought as hard as he could, and then he passed away on June 16th, 1970. He was only 26 years old. He had 6 Bears teammates who were pallbearers for him, and that included Dick Butkus, as well as Ed O'Bradovich right here. And some of these players, Ed O'Bradovich and Dick Butkus, you can see them in the film Brian's Song, along with some other players who had been teammates of his as well. James Caan and Billy D. Williams star in that movie as Brian and Gale. And, another, obviously, pallbearer was Gale Sayers, his best friend, who was with him a lot in the hospital and during that time as well. He's buried at St. Mary's Catholic Cemetery in Evergreen Park in Illinois. And now I'm going to mention this right here. This is Brian Piccolo, A Short Season by Jeannie Morris. And this is a book that I still have from my middle school years. I guess I never returned it. Maybe there's a bill. Maybe my parents paid it. I'm honestly not sure. But in here you'll see with this, there's a foreword that was written by Johnny Morris right here. And Johnny was that teammate of Brian's. And it even mentions in here, Brian Piccolo was a friend and former Chicago Bear teammate who lost a 7-month battle against cancer. Pick was one of those special people, a man with solid character and wholesome sensitivity towards others. And then this is the part I wanted to mention. It says, this book was not originally intended to come out in its present form. My wife Jeannie and I, like many of our friends, wanted to help Brian and his wife Joy in some way during his illness. Joy mentioned that the sheer boredom of the hospital seemed to be one of Brian's biggest problems. Jeannie, thinking about Brian's natural wit and crazy football character, suggested that he write a book. It would give him something to do, to think and talk about. Pick was all for it. His close friend and Bears roommate Gale Sayers was about to publish a book, and Brian said, if magic can do it, so can I. So they encouraged him to write this book, and he had been writing it up until he passed, but it obviously wasn't finished. And so Jeannie Morris completed the book, filled it out, and when you read the book, you'll see quotes and excerpts from Brian and what he wrote along with what Jeannie did. And I don't have any cards of her husband, Johnny, so I just ordered one on eBay. I thought that'd be nice to have for my collection as well. And I did want to also mention, some of the legacy things with Brian Piccolo. He didn't win that award the year that Gale Sayers won the award, but after Brian's passing, since then the Chicago Bears have had a Most Courageous Player award that typically it went to the rookie. Now they do for rookie and veterans, and it's voted upon by the veteran players, and it's named after Brian Piccolo. So he gets that recognition every year now. Also, his number 41 was retired. And I did want to mention part of the story behind this card right here. I couldn't remember if it was this one or my William Perry Pro Set short print, but it was this one. I double-checked with my mom. So this is pre-eBay. This is when I was a kid. This is one of my earliest vintage cards. And we had a couple card shops in the area. They did not have this card. And my mom had asked them, hey, if you ever know of anybody who has this card that would be willing to sell it, please let me know. So she left her number. And eventually one of the card shops called her and let her know that they knew someone who had this card. And that I lived in Salt Lake City at the time. And my mom got this for me for my birthday when I was a kid. I think it would have been my 13th birthday, maybe 13th or 14th. And it was kind of a hassle for her because she found this guy that she didn't know. She went to his place in Salt Lake, wanted to purchase the card. All she had was a check. She had cash, but she was $5 short, and the guy would not sell it for $5 short. So my mom had to leave. She had to go to the bank. She had to get out the $5 cash, then go back to the guy's house, and then finally get it. So my mom put in a lot of effort to get me this card. So the combination of being named after him and his significance in Bear history, along with the effort my mom put in to get me this card, makes this my favorite card. Love this card, love the player, and really happy to have been named after him. And what I'm going to do in just a minute here, if you can see back here, I've got this autograph of Gale Sayers. I was lucky enough to meet him it was like 1990 or maybe 1991. He came to Salt Lake City for a card show, and he signed autographs there. And so my two brothers, my sister, and I all were able to pick up a picture and go through the line and get an autograph from him. And I was able to let him know that I was named after Brian Piccolo, and he looked at me and said he was a great man. And it was really a great moment for me to be able to meet Gale Sayers, get his autograph, let him know that I was named after his friend. And I have a short little video clip that my mom took of my siblings and I in line to get that autograph. And so I will show that. I will include that at the very end of this video. I did just want to kind of mention one other thing before I show the video. There are some real parallels to Brian and Gail, as well as Walter Payton and his buddy Matsui. This is his rookie card, and I love this card because you've got Matsui along with Walter right next to him right here. Suey was the fullback for Walter and a backup running back for Walter. They became best friends as well, and when Walter was going through his own battle with cancer, Matsui was there for him. He ended up becoming the executor of his estate. He's still very close to the family, still very involved with them. Just a great friend. And similarly, Walter had been writing this book right here, Never Die Easy, and he passed away, unfortunately, before he was able to finish it. So Don Yeager co-wrote that book with Walter. So you'll, just like with Brian's book, you'll see stories from Brian, you'll see stories with Walter, and then you'll have Jeannie and Don filling in the rest of that. And so another great friendship between two running backs on the Chicago Bears. So there are two quotes from Walter that I love. One that I want to mention is the title of his book, Never Die Easy. Walter has a quote that says, "Never die easy. Why run out of bounds and die easy? Make that linebacker pay. It carries into all facets of your life. It's okay to lose, to die, but don't die without trying, without giving it your best." And he also was quoted in the book with, "If you ask me how I want to be remembered, it's as a winner. You know what a winner is? A winner is somebody who has given his very best effort, who has tried the hardest they possibly can, who has utilized every ounce of energy and strength within them to accomplish something. It doesn't mean that they accomplished it or failed. It means that they've given their best. That's a winner." And I think Brian and Walter are both examples of that. And, these days, Walter Payton, the NFL Man of the Year award, is named after him. Brian Piccolo has that Chicago Bears Courage Award named after him. I think the ACC even has a Courage Award named after Brian as well. His movie, his friendship with Gail, his life, it is a legacy, as with Walter. And that is why this Brian Piccolo card is my all-time favorite card. All right, so now I'm going to end with a quick little clip from a home movie from back in the day that my mom took with Gale Sayers. And as always, go Bears.
Mark Nichols' best friend through third year, and this is one of his best friends. We named Brian after his best friend, Brian Nichols. Okay. What if somebody, like an order something? I mean, he doesn't have to be golfing. We all the books. He golfing.
All right. Thanks for watching, everybody.